Welcome back. Now, consumers in Kenya will continue to feel the pinch of the high cost of living despite recent increase in the minimum wage. This is after inflation for the month of April 2017 jumped to 14.48%, making a mockery of the government pledge to retain it within a target range of 2.5 to 7.5%. Kenyans are now forced to dig deeper into their pockets while purchasing essential products like milk, sugar, and maize flour. Price of living has really shot up. The other day, I was going home, and along the way I met my niece, and she tells me that milk is 75 bob, and I almost had a heart attack. This is just anecdotal from people on the ground. If you walk into a supermarket, sugar is 160 per kg. Milk, as I said, up to 75 bob. Maize flour is 180 bob. These are increases of 50, 60 shillings. And inflation, of course, 7.5%. No, 11.48%. Wangari, I'll start with you as our resident financial analyst. What is going on here? This is like runaway inflation, and it's happening like right before our very eyes.
Two things. One, the ever thing that we blame, which is the drought. The rains failed us last year between October and December. And so really the way it works is that with no rains, it means that you're not getting, the maize is not growing, the sugar is not being, processed, milk, the cows don't have anything to eat, so they're not producing milk. And so there's a shortage, and with the shortage, demand is lower. And so the cost of everything, because if there's a short supply of, the demand is high because there's a short supply of certain products, the demand is much, much higher. And that drives up the prices insanely. But, it's the age-old question. It's not like the drought is the first time to happen, this year. We just lack the planning. We lack the processes to have food banks to provide for in crises like this. So I think in terms of managing this, and I think the inflation is actually being driven by most of the food and non-alcoholic items in the basket, the CPI, that determine the CPI, and so. It's really a balance of those things, and everything is connected. Because even some people are saying, then why don't we just import sugar or foodstuffs from the neighbors, from Tanzania, from Uganda? But in order to import, we need foreign exchange. And to get foreign exchange, you have to export. What are you exporting? You have nothing. If you're not producing anything, then you don't have foreign exchange.
So do we conclude
it's a vicious cycle.
The economy is not failing, but is on very shaky ground?
The fundamentals are rough. And I have to say, it seems indirect, but it's actually unemployment and lack of productivity that is causing this issue. Because if you were able to produce more, if you're able to use your factors of production to produce more per output, per unit of input, then you would have a lot more productivity, and then you would, demand and supply would be balanced. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals are wrong. The fundamentals are not working for the economy. So there's a big problem.
Might this be a governance issue, or do these things happen?
Before we even ask about that, I'm having a challenge understanding just what you're talking about in the very basic sense that what we're talking about is what we will have in our shops as end product processed goods for local consumption. So if the demand for sugar is going up because the supply for sugar is low, that translates down to the factory, which is buying from the farmer the cane to process this sugar. So how come the price of selling cane to the factory is not going up? How come the farmer in Bomet is still paying 30 shillings per litre, is still getting paid 30 shillings a litre for milk, and the same litre is going to be sold at 75 shillings once it has been processed? It is not the production cost that has increased. It is the demand. And so why then isn't the farmer benefiting?
But the farmer has nobody else to sell to. The farmer is pretty much captured.
So the farmer
they have to sell to these people, and so they don't have anybody else who's buying from them. And in many cases, farmers are also locked into deals. They have one person who buys from them at a set price over a set number of years in terms of hedging. And so the farmer is really locked in. But it's these intermediaries, the people who are buying in bulk from different farmers, that actually benefiting, if you can say that, partially benefiting, but also partially because the demand is...
Okay, Wangari, can we compare this to different, because this is an election year, can we compare this to the same time last year, or maybe even 5 years ago when there was a similar drought? Was the situation the same, or are we seeing worse conditions this time around?
I think we're seeing worse. I think inflation has been its worst right now, I think in the last 5 years or so. And I think even in terms of the drought, coupling that with the lack of investment because of an election year. And in Kenya, when you have an election, investment goes down. And this happens much before, in the year before, because they already see, people they have expectations and they see into the future. So they reduce in terms of their innovation, in terms of their investment, I mean. So I think it really is a spiraling issue that's connected even to the elections.
Quickly, Betty, you were saying something. You have 3 seconds.
And I read this in the newspaper today. No, seriously? Okay, fine, forget what I had to say. Let's move on.
We can come back to it because we're still sticking with matters economy. And the increased minimum wage, the government has increased the minimum wage by 18%. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who presided over Labor Day celebrations on Monday, ordered the rise in wages as well as an increase in non-taxable overtime and bonuses to 100,000 shillings. The 18% increment will lift some workers into a 15% tax bracket, making the wage increment negligible.
2 straight years, we have not increased the minimum wage, and so after consultation with key stakeholders, I have directed that the minimum wage be increased by 18%.
Bei ya chakula ikishuka chini, itakuwa at least, itakuwa imetusaidia hiyo yenye ameongeza. Lakini kama itashuka, hapo ni kama hajafanya kitu.
Right, so the minimum wage is up, I think, to, well, I'll go with, for house helps, I think it's gone to 14,900 bob. Across the board, casual laborers, caretakers, it's gone up. Of course, it's lifted them into now a tax bracket they were not in before, which essentially means they'll be earning the same thing. Because when you tax them now, you raise it and then you lower it. And then there's NSSF, there's NHIF. So was this really a raising of the minimum wage? Or I don't know who to start with. Everybody's looking at me.
I will say.
Let's start with Betty because she didn't get to.
Yes, this is okay. So here you go. You've just said for house helps and domestic laborers, it's 14,000 shillings.
Yeah, 14,000.
So really, which household is this? Because honestly speaking, the person who's running that household is probably just 1 or 2 levels above that 14,000 shillings. They can't afford that. So you will raise the minimum wage on paper, but in reality, it's not going up, and the cost of living is going up.
Yes.
And so that's why the soundbite, the guy was saying, you know what, if the cost of living comes down, then that would make a difference. Yeah. But you're raising it by this much, and I am still earning the same amount.
It seems almost theoretical. Like it's not. It's actually on paper, like you were saying.
And actually, it has a risk of exacerbating the problem that we have right now, because if you increase the cost of some of your factors of production, if you increase your labor costs, that translates into higher costs of products that you receive.
Back to the raising of the prices.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, you're not really making anything better for anybody, because you're raising the wage as a short-term fix, but then the price of the things that you're buying is actually going up. So it's really a lose-lose situation. And I think, as I said earlier, jobs solve the unemployment problem. Jubilee promised that they were going to do that, and they unfortunately didn't come through.
They have 3 more months to create 1 million jobs. So
the time is not over.
Exactly.
And they had promised that the economy would grow into double digits, I think, but it looks like inflation has overtaken that particular promise. But then we had this conversation about house helps, especially because this is a thing that affects Kenyans across the board, and people are simply saying they cannot afford that minimum wage. So what is supposed to happen? Because this has been announced to the entire world. Everybody now knows their rights. Cost of living has gone so high. What's the stopgap measure, Dr. Nelly, do you think?
Where I'm sitting, I think raising the minimum wage has not done anything for anybody. We expect the cost of living to go down, because once the cost of living goes down, even the head of that household is able to afford a better life. He's actually able to afford to pay this person better without a minimum wage being set for them.
Yeah.
When the last time the minimum wage was raised, on social media, women were up in arms. They're like, how do you expect us to run households? You're asking us to pay one person who's running my household half of what I earn. And they say, look, if this is what you want, I will do it. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to deduct my rent. I'm going to deduct the food I feed this person. I'm going to deduct what I spend on them in terms of utilities. And if they actually did that, then the person's going to owe the employer, not the other way around. And we don't really want to go down that road, because what we're going to end up with is we're going to worsen the unemployment. It's already biting.
Yes, it's a domino effect.
It's a domino effect, and that's our reality where we're sitting right now. Unless that economy is going to grow, that inflation is going to go down, those production costs are going to go down. We're talking about banning things that have actually enabled these people to live. We don't want second-hand clothes. We are overtaxing them. We don't want them to get dressed.
Right,
I mean,
I'm going to have to stop you there. I know it's really dire. It's a bad situation. But just to switch gears completely, let's end with one of the NASA co-principals, Kalonzo Musyoka, whose foundation was suspended by the non-governmental organization Coordination Board with immediate effect. Over 146 million shillings in donor funds that it claims are unaccounted for. In the letter dated May 2nd, the board's executive director, Fazul Mohammed, dissolved the entire board of directors of the foundation and ordered the fund accounts frozen. Mohammed claims the foundation has been submitting false returns to the NGO board, adding that the foundation's bank accounts are operated by total strangers, which is contrary to the law.
But I therefore want to urge we separate politics from NGOs that are so well-meaning. I saw mention of some 50 million shillings from China Youth Development Fund. This came, yes indeed, and the 50 million shillings was given as a dummy check, work to be done through the foundation. But what our Chinese friends did was they brought all the materials, for the 5 or 4 primary schools. One in Mheshimiwa Musila's constituency, as it then was, Mwingi South, and then the other 3, I think in Mwingi North. Nataka niseme mimi nadhani kwa maoni yangu Rais Uhuru Kenyatta hawezi kuhusika na mambo kama haya, lakini wale wako chini yake pale ndio wenye mambo haya.
Okay, so we're running out of time, ladies. Quickly, 30 seconds each. What is your take on this? Is it a political witch hunt or is it genuine?
He would have stood a better chance at defending himself if he didn't bring politics into it. If he had just spoken about it as is and not touched politics, he probably have sounded a whole lot more credible. I don't mean that he is not, but I do not know. I haven't really seen all the details, but what I know is that the NGO board has a lot of specific processes before they get to
They can
this
even
point.
delve into people's accounts?
They can look into their accounts, but they have a process. There has to be filed a complaint from the organization itself that we have issues here. They have to go and ask the board to come and present and defend themselves. If these processes were not followed, then obviously the NGO Coordination Board broke the law.
Betty?
I think that 3 months to the election, Kalonzo is milking this fantastically.
As he
and
should.
It's very good
As
for
he
him.
should, yeah.
But, you know, let me tell you something, and I read this online. Any politician or their organization that is taken to task by the NGO Coordination Board automatically turns into a superhero. And so 3 months to it, he just looks fantastic, and it's good for him. Unfortunately, I agree with Nelly Bosire that, you know, we have to, you know, take a step back. Is this really just political? Is there something behind this? And that is for the journalists to just dig into it. Yes, I'm putting it back to you.
I shall dig in.
I think it's good for the NGO board to be vigilant, because in an election year, NGOs are used for various nefarious purposes in elections, and I think it's good for them to bring this to question and to look deeper into it. So, go ahead.
Right, brilliant. I won't say what I think because I'm out of time, but it's been a fun hour. It's gone by so fast. And Twitter poll was, is Uhuru Kenyatta to blame for the felling of giants during the Jubilee Party primaries? Is Uhuru Kenyatta to blame for the felling of giants during the Jubilee Party primaries? And 36% of you say yes, 54% of you say no. There you have it. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Julie Masiga. I've been joined by Dr. Nelly Bosire, Betty Waitherero, and Wangari Mwikia. Please do join us next week, same time, same place.